As Sheriff Klausner says, the smell description is not unusual. James Strahan and Harold Teskey recently saw something on the roadside near Colton, Oregon.
And there was a big, huge object on the left of the road, and I rolled the window down in the car, and this thing was approximately 3.5, 4 feet wide, about 6, 7 foot tall. And the odor of this animal, after I rolled the window down, was so offensive that I couldn't remain there any longer. And I was scared, too. And I've been around the mountains and around animals a lot, and this thing truly scared me. And so I got out of there and rolled the windows up in the car, went on home. And the odor of that animal stayed in that car until the next morning. It was still in there.
1 mile outside the Dalles, Oregon, several members of the Bigfoot Investigation Project and Information Center climbed to an observation point. They're led by Peter Byrne, 50-year-old adventurer and former big game hunter in Nepal. Byrne has dropped his rifle in favor of camera and binoculars. For 5 years, he's headed the Bigfoot Investigation Project and stalked these North Woods, checking out every story and every set of tracks. His prey is elusive.
We will talk to the person who says that they've seen one. We will talk to their family, perhaps to their employers or employees. We'll talk to the local police to see if they know them, to find out if the person is simply a joker, a hoaxer of some kind, or if they're a person of reputation and of known integrity. And then we'll go and see the person, we'll interview them, and of course we'll try and get to the place of the actual sighting as quickly as possible.
One of the most credible sightings took place near Mount Hood, Oregon in 1974. 2 loggers, Jack Cochran and Furman Osborne, were working in an area of fallen timber. Cochran explains what he saw.
I looked off towards the woods, and I saw these 2 long legs moving at the edge of the timber. And as this thing walked, it walked with a glide, and then it reached an arm out and kind of touched the tree as it walked by. And I saw these wide shoulders, and then it just moved off down the hill.
J.C. Rourke and I were up on that little hill there and setting chokers, and the cat came down to the line and he didn't come back, so we decided to walk out in the woods on the timber so we could be in the shade, and we heard this commotion there in the brush, and we saw this big monster going out through there. I yelled for my buddy. I wanted him to see him, and I started running. I wanted to get a closer look at him, and we chased him over the ridge there, and at one time I was within 50 feet of him.
Whatever Osborne chased through the woods left him far behind. Cochran, an amateur artist, tried to sketch what he saw.
He was tall, long-legged, and hairy, very broad shoulders, and his head seemed to just spring up out of his shoulders, no neck. The arms were long and more in proportion than a human.
There is persuasive evidence that men may be closing in on Bigfoot. What will the hunters do if they find him?
And we'll just smooth it out a little bit, make sure it runs into all the cracks and corners, and that's really all there is to it.
Peter Byrne, professional Bigfoot investigator.
Before doing this, and now
Hundreds of unexplained footprints have been found in these woods. They receive close examination by the experts.
This is a plaster cast of an actual footprint here, and it's a 13.5-inch cast, and it has a number of peculiarities. One is the normal bulge behind the big toe or the hallux, and then there's a second bulge, and this is peculiar to all of the footprints that we have seen. Nobody really knows what causes this second bulge. Perhaps it's a muscle of some kind to support the enormous weight.
This is a cast of an individual that's very obviously crippled, and I studied this some length and found these 2 bulges on the outside of the foot. Anatomically, they have to correspond to a couple of gaps in the bones in the foot themselves. And the bulges in a normal human foot expanded to this size would have been here, but they're shifted forward, Well, anatomically, this means that the ankle weight is shifted somewhat forward. It's not just a gigantic human foot. It's the leverage has been redesigned. And this happens to be redesigned just exactly the way it would have to be for a 800-pound animal. So if the idea of that this was faked by somebody isn't quite so simple. If it was faked, it was done by a human anatomist who was a real genius, and he had to have laid out thousands of these fakes all over the place, and that just simply becomes impossible.
Among the fakery that we have seen is a piece of film made in 1970 by a man in northern Washington. At first, it looked very good. It was a man in a fur suit, of course. The particular man tried to sell it to us for $25,000. And he told us that the creature in this movie was 8 foot 6 inches in height. But when we found the area, we were able to do our own measurements. And we saw that the creature in the fur suit, or the man in the fur suit, was a little under 6 feet in height. This is, I think, is a good example of the kind of fakery that we have encountered through the years.
Throughout the Northwest, there are hundreds of men hunting for Bigfoot. Don Peterson, Jack Sullivan, and James Huskin have searched for several years. They believe the hunt will end with a bullet.
Well, I think eventually somebody's going to bring one in. It's the only way. Pictures aren't going to be enough, because there's been film taken of one of these creatures anyway, and it's in dispute.
Like Jim said, if we take a bunch of pictures, they're going to be under dispute. And if you can shoot one animal, you might be able to save the rest of them from everybody else from shooting them too.
And that sets up a conflict among Bigfoot hunters. Does it have to be killed to prove it exists? Through the centuries, the mighty Columbia River separating Washington and Oregon has cut a deep gorge on its way to the Pacific Ocean. It is a big, rugged, beautiful land where man holds a deep respect for nature. In Stevenson, Washington, they passed an ordinance setting a $10,000 fine or 5 years in jail for killing a Bigfoot. The people living in this country have a special relationship to the woods. They depend on the land for their survival. They may not totally believe in Bigfoot, but they believe in the possibility. And they don't want it killed, at least not in their county. District Attorney Robert Leake.
We didn't feel that if there was such an animal, that the animal had ever harmed anybody, or that it had done anything to deserve to be shot or captured.
We need a piece of the body. Nothing else will be accepted.
I think that there are many other ways of proving the existence of something other than killing that particular thing that you're trying to prove exists.